Welcome to the deep dive. We sift through stacks of information, research notes, all that stuff to bring you the insights that really matter.
And today we're jumping into some pretty ancient stories. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, looking at how they use things like allusions, imagery, symbols,
Yeah.
the deeper language.
To shed light on truths that, well, still speak to us today, especially for our times, actually.
That's interesting, this idea of present truth. Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure, it's not that truth changes, but these historical accounts, they highlight specific aspects of eternal truth that are particularly relevant, even urgent for us right now.
Okay.
So our goal today isn't to get lost in every tiny detail, like counting every single stone.
Right, we're looking for the big picture.
Exactly. The broad themes, the principles, the stuff that helps us understand what's most important in the grand scheme of things.
Okay, so let's talk about how we even approach these accounts, these prophecies. Our sources really stress looking for the major points.
Yeah, the main principles, they warn against milking every detail for some hidden meaning.
Which can lead to some pretty strange places, right? Prophetic absurdities, I think they called it. We've all heard some of those interpretations.
Definitely. So the question becomes, how do we find that meaning without getting totally bogged down?
Good question.
Well, the idea is these stories have always meant something to people in every generation. Timeless lessons.
But they have a special kind of resonance for people living just before major end-time events.
That's what the sources suggest, an amplified relevance. It's about seeing the larger patterns, the outlines that really illuminate things for today. Think forest, not just individual trees.
Got it. Okay, so our first story, Jonah. A prophet many of us can probably relate to.
Oh, absolutely. His reluctance is very human,
He was told, go to Nineveh, and he basically ran the other way.
literally. But his journey, short as it was, is packed with these remarkable overtones of future events.
And you can kind of see why he hesitated, can you? Nineveh was the capital of Assyria.
Known for, well, unusual cruelty. Not exactly a place you'd volunteer to visit with a message of repentance.
No kidding. So what's the key connection here?
Well, it's fascinating how Jonah's experience lines up as a direct parallel, a sign, really, pointing to a huge moment in history.
You mean the 3 days and 3 nights?
Exactly. Jonah in the belly of the great fish. Now, the sources are pretty clear on this. Jonah wasn't actually dead the whole time.
Right. He prayed from inside the fish. That suggests he was conscious.
Very much alive, conscious, probably in agony, feeling cut off,
Yeah.
like the grave was closing in.
Okay, and understanding that helps us understand Jesus's 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth.
It's crucial because it's not necessarily about a literal 72 hours in the grave.
Which is what I think many people assume.
Right. The sources explain it refers more to the whole period of his intense anguish and separation from the Father. It started before the cross.
So it includes Gethsemane, the trials.
Precisely. This ancient way of calculating time, inclusive reckoning, is key. Any part of a day or night counted as a full day or night.
Ah, okay, so it's not clock watching.
Not at all. It's Gethsemane Thursday night, the arrest, trials Friday morning, crucifixion, death Friday afternoon, burial all through Saturday, resurrection Sunday morning, that whole span.
The suffering, the separation, that parallels Jonah's ordeal.
Exactly. And just like God commanded the fish to release Jonah.
Vomit him onto dry land, yeah.
So the Father commanded the grave to release Jesus. Jesus was, as one source puts it, a prisoner of divine justice, and only the Father could authorize his release.
Wow, that adds a whole layer to it. It's not just about resurrection, but the Father's command for resurrection.
It connects Jonah's physical confinement and despair to Jesus's profound spiritual anguish, a much bigger picture.
So what about Jonah himself after this? He gets asked who he is.
And he declares, I am a Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land.
And that statement, it sounds familiar, doesn't it?
It really does. It's strikingly similar to a key message later in prophecy in Revelation, the call to worship the Creator.
The one who made heaven, earth, the sea.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like an early echo.
It really is. And it sets the stage for what happens next in Nineveh.
Right. The city known for brutality.
Unusual cruelty, yes. Yet when Jonah finally preaches there, after his dramatic rescue,
The whole city repents. Seriously.
the entire city, from the king down to the common people, even the animals, remarkably, they all turned from their evil ways.
Oh, why? What changed?
But think about it. The sources point out their main god was a fish god, Dagon.
Ah. So when Jonah shows up, having survived 3 days inside a great fish,
It would have been an impressive experience, to say the least. A living miracle walking their streets. It validated his message completely.
okay, that makes sense. It undermined their whole belief system.
Shattered it. Which leads to another interesting point Jesus made later.
About judgment being easier for Nineveh than for, well, people who should have known better.
Exactly. Even God's own people who had strayed. It's a powerful lesson, isn't it?
It really is. Nineveh, this pagan, cruel city, repents after one sign and a short sermon.
While others who knew all this, who had generations of teaching and history, they didn't believe.
And that kind of message, calling for repentance, calling people to sort of spiritually come out, it's often not popular, is it?
Rarely popular. Even when delivered kindly, it often provokes a negative reaction.
It's a stark contrast, but it also shows
But even the hardest hearts can change. Nineveh proves it. Their repentance was total sackcloth, ashes, even for the animals.
it shows God's readiness to respond when hearts are genuinely humbled.
Absolutely. It wasn't about their IQ or their background knowledge. It was about their response, their hearts.
That sets a high bar for open hearts. Okay, let's shift gears. Belshazzar's feast, another dramatic story.
Very dramatic. So Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar had seen God's power. Nebuchadnezzar himself was humbled.
Right, he acknowledged God eventually, but now his successor, Belshazzar.
Throws this huge, lavish feast. 1,000 of his lords. Pure excess.
But it wasn't just a party, was it? There's something else going on.
Oh, much more. It was an act of deliberate, blatant defiance. He orders the sacred vessels from the Jerusalem temple.
The gold and silver ones Nebuchadnezzar took.
Yes. And he, his lords, his wives, his concubines, they drink wine from them.
Wow.
And while doing it, they praise their own gods, gods of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, stone. It was outright blasphemy, mocking the true God.
Essentially saying, our gods and our power are greater.
Precisely. A direct insult. And
Then the hand appears. Just fingers. A bloodless hand. Writing on the wall.
talk about a party killer. Imagine the scene, torchlight flickering.
Silence falls.
And Belshazzar's reaction is instant. His face changes. His thoughts trouble him.
His knees literally knock together. Utter terror. Confronted by this undeniable, unseen power.
And the message, Mene, tekel parson, cryptic.
Until Daniel interprets it. Daniel, who had this superior wisdom and wasn't even at the feast, gets called in. And the interpretation is just devastating.
Completely. God has numbered your kingdom and finished it. You've been weighed, found wanting. Your kingdom is divided, given to the Medes and Persians.
Game over. But the sources highlight something even sadder in Daniel's words to Belshazzar.
Yes. Daniel says, but you, his son, have not humbled your heart, although you knew all this.
He knew Nebuchadnezzar's story, how God humbled him.
He knew it all, but he chose defiance anyway. And that, the sources say, points to a fundamental truth.
It's often not the mind, the intellect, that's the barrier to faith.
It's the heart. Belshazzar had the head knowledge. The problem was his heart. He chose not to humble it.
That's sobering. So connecting this defiance to Babylon's fall, the Euphrates River.
Yeah, the river was their lifeline, their defense.
Right.
It flowed right under the massive walls, made them feel impregnable.
But it became their downfall.
Ironically, yes. Cyrus, the Persian commander, had this ingenious strategy.
He didn't attack the walls head on,
No. He diverted the river upstream. The water level dropped.
allowing his troops to just walk in under the walls through the riverbed.
Exactly. And they found the city completely unprepared. The inner gates weren't even guarded.
Because they were all celebrating Belshazzar's feast.
The whole city was dancing and indulging themselves in pleasures. Oblivious. The city fell in a single night.
Sudden, unexpected, despite their arrogance.
And this scene, the drying up of the literal Euphrates, has huge prophetic echoes, doesn't it?
It does. Thinking about the fall of spiritual Babylon in Revelation.
Right. It's a symbol for the drying up of support, resources, power for a system that opposes God. And it happens unexpectedly.
It reminds me of Jesus' warning about coming like a thief.
Precisely. The surprise isn't just because people are ignorant of predictions. It's because they've chosen not to believe what God said would happen, like Belshazzar.
So after Babylon falls, Cyrus steps in, the Persian king. What's his significance?
Well, Cyrus is fascinating. He's portrayed as this liberator figure.
He conquered Babylon, but then
He issues a decree allowing the captive Jews to go back home to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple after decades of exile.
That's remarkable, a pagan king doing that.
It is. And under him, the Persian Empire became the biggest the world had seen. In this specific role, freeing God's people enabling the temple rebuilding.
He's seen as a type of foreshadowing.
Exactly, a type of Christ. His actions prefigure Jesus' greater work of spiritual liberation, freeing us from sin's captivity.
Okay, so we've seen Jonah, Nineveh, Babylon, Persia. Are there patterns here?
Oh, definitely. The sources really emphasize this theme. History has repeated itself.
Oh, so?
Well, think about all those empires. Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, each had its chance, its period of test.
A time to align with God's purposes, maybe.
Right. But each one eventually failed. Their glory faded, their power crumbled.
Well, what were the common threads? Why did they fail?
Pride seems to be a big one. Defiance of God's ways. Refusing to humble the heart, even when they knew better, like Belshazzar.
So God allows nations to rise, gives them influence.
To see if they'll fulfill his purposes. Will they reflect justice, mercy, or just pursue their own power and glory?
Which brings it right back to us today. If history repeats, and if the heart is the key issue, not just knowledge.
Then what does that mean for how we approach truth, how we make our choices?
Because just like Belshazzar, we have opportunities to know the truth.
We do. And our response, our readiness, it's ultimately determined by our hearts.
But Nineveh gives us hope, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It shows repentance is always possible. That turning point, that heart change, God always responds to that. It's about what we do with what we know. The heart's attitude.
We've covered a lot of ground here. Jonah's reluctance, Nineveh's repentance, Babylon's fall, Cyrus's role.
All pointing to these larger outlines and principles that help us understand our own time, this present truth.
And the core message seems to be about preparedness, doesn't it?
It really does. Babylon's fall was so swift, so unexpected, despite all the signs. It's a huge caution.
It connects to that question in Revelation you mentioned about not being caught naked.
Yes. What does that mean? It means being spiritually unprepared, exposed, vulnerable when Christ returns, as opposed to being ready, clothed in his righteousness, aligned with truth.
So you've heard these stories, these insights echoing from the past. Here's our final thought for you to chew on.
In a world where these historical patterns keep repeating, and warnings are all around us,
What steps will you take practically to make sure your heart stays open to truth so that you're found truly clothed and ready, not caught by surprise? Something to think about until our next deep dive.